I can still taste the copper, not blood, though I'd taste plenty of that later. No, this was different. The copper tang of the coin they pressed into my palm the day I took the oath, 60 septum signing bonus they called it. I held it on my tongue for just a moment before pocketing it, letting the metallic bitterness coat my mouth while the recruiter droned through the articles of Imperial service. The words meant nothing then. Legal formalities, bureaucratic incantations. I was 19 years old, standing in a cramped recruitment office in Cheydinhall that smelled of old parchment and desperation, and I thought I understood what I was agreeing to. I understood nothing. My name was Marcus Valerius, third son of a failed merchant in Cyrodiil. No inheritance, no prospects, no future except the one I could carve with a sword. The Legion promised 3 meals a day, training, and a pension after 25 years. It promised belonging, purpose, a place in something larger than myself. They never mentioned what you have to become to earn that place. This is what it was like. Not the songs they sing in the taverns, not the stories painted on recruitment posters. This is the truth they don't put in the official histories. This is what the Empire asks of its soldiers. This is what I became in service to something I thought I believed in. This is my testimony, my confession, my warning, because I still taste that copper sometimes, even now. Even after everything that happened in Skyrim, even after I learned what the Empire really needs from men like me, the taste never quite goes away. You have to understand something about the Legion before the rest of this makes sense. We weren't an army. Not really, we were a machine. A vast bureaucratic apparatus that converted young men and women into something useful to the Empire. Raw material fed into one end, soldiers produced at the other. And like any machine, it required constant maintenance, constant feeding, constant sacrifice of component parts to keep the whole functioning. The Empire in 4E201 was not the Empire of legend. We weren't the Iron Legions of Tiber Septim conquering Tamriel with divine mandate. We weren't even the professional military that held the line against Mehrunes Dagon during the Oblivion crisis. We were exhausted. We were diminished. We were an institution struggling to maintain the fiction of its own relevance while the world it claimed to govern slowly pulled itself apart. The Great War had ended 30 years before I enlisted, but the Empire was still bleeding from it. The White Gold Concordat, that humiliating treaty with the Aldmeri Dominion, had cost us more than territory. It had cost us faith. The ban on Talos worship, the permission for Thalmor Justiciars to operate freely within Imperial territory. The abandonment of Hammerfell, each concession was a wound that wouldn't heal. Festering in the collective consciousness of every Imperial citizen who remembered when the Empire meant something. And then Ulfric Stormcloak murdered High King Torg with his voice and plunged Skyrim into civil war. That's where they sent me. That's where they sent all of us, fresh recruits, barely trained, marching north to fight other men who looked like us, spoke the same language, worshipped the same gods, except for the one we weren't allowed to worship anymore. Brothers killing brothers to preserve an empire that couldn't even protect its own faith. But I didn't understand any of that complexity when I took the oath. I understood orders, I understood hierarchy, I understood that the Legion would transform me from a merchant surplus son into something with purpose. They were right about the transformation, wrong about everything else. The journey to Skyrim took 2 weeks. We left Cheydinhall in early sun's dusk. 43 recruits in Legion auxiliaries, not even proper Legion armor yet, just leather jerkins with the red diamond sigil painted on. We hadn't earned Imperial steel, we were probationary, expendable. We would earn our armor by surviving long enough to deserve it. Or we would die in leather and be buried in unmarked graves, names added to a requisition form requesting replacement personnel. Sergeant Cassia Meridius led our column. Every shadow between the pine trees might hide a Nord with a battle axe and a grudge against the Empire. Every ridge might conceal archers. Every frozen stream we crossed might be the place where someone decided we weren't worth the effort of taking prisoner. The rations were worse than I'd imagined. Stale bread, salted meat so hard you had to soak it in snowmelt before you could chew it. thin vegetable soup when we stopped at Imperial camps. The Legion fed its soldiers enough to keep us functional, barely. We weren't comfortable. We were fuel for the machine. We tell ourselves stories to survive. We tell ourselves that what we're doing matters, that our sacrifice serves a greater purpose, that the empire we're fighting for deserves our loyalty. We tell ourselves these things because the alternative, that we're just bodies being fed into a machine that serves no purpose except its own perpetuation, is too horrible to contemplate. I believed those stories then. I needed to believe them. It would be months before I learned the truth. The landscape changed as we moved deeper into Skyrim. The Rift's autumn forests gave way to harsher terrain. Volcanic tundra stretched before us, dotted with hot springs that steamed in the frozen air. Mountains rose like broken teeth against gray skies. This was old land, primal land. The kind of place where you felt the weight of history pressing down on your chest like a physical thing. We passed through villages, small collections of timber houses clustered around a mill or a mine. The locals watched us with hard eyes. Not hostile exactly, just wary. The Legion represented authority, taxes, conscription. We were outsiders enforcing laws they hadn't asked for, fighting a war many of them didn't support. Some villages flew the Red Diamond banner, others didn't. The Civil War had fractured communities, turned neighbors against each other, made every settlement a potential battlefield. Sergeant Meridius ordered us to avoid interaction with civilians when possible. "They're not your friends," she explained during one evening's camp. "They're not your enemies, they're civilians in a war zone, which makes them unpredictable. Some will feed you, some will poison you. Some will smile to your face and report your position to Stormcloak scouts the moment you leave. Trust your unit, trust the Legion, trust nothing else." We saw our first giant near Windhelm. Massive creature, 15 feet tall, herding mammoths across the tundra with a club the size of a tree trunk. One of the recruits, a Redguard named Scipio, started to raise his bow. "Stand down," Meridius barked. "Giants don't bother us, we don't bother them. The Legion has enough enemies without making new ones." Smart policy, but I remember thinking, what kind of war are we fighting where giants are less dangerous than our fellow men? The irony wasn't lost on me. We were marching through one of the most hostile environments in Tamriel, land populated by trolls, ice wraiths, sabercats, and worse, and our biggest threat was other humans. Other citizens of the Empire, technically. Men who spoke our language, worshipped our gods, shared our history. The Stormcloaks weren't foreign invaders, they were us. That's what made the war so bitter, so personal, so utterly without glory. I asked Meridius about it one night, why we were really here, what we were really fighting for. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into the campfire. Then, "The Empire is an idea, Valerius. The idea that order is better than chaos, that law is better than warlords, that we're stronger together than apart. The Stormcloaks think they can survive alone. They're wrong. Without the Empire, Skyrim falls to the Dominion within a generation, so we fight. Not for glory, not for land, for survival, for the only system that's kept Tamriel from tearing itself apart." I wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. The alternative was too bleak, that we were just pawns in a political struggle between equally flawed causes, killing and dying for abstractions that meant nothing to the people we were supposedly protecting. The first death. I remember the night it truly hit me what I'd gotten into. We'd made camp in the ruins of an old Nord barrow, just the entrance chamber, far enough from the sealed depths that we didn't have to worry about Draugr. 43 of us huddled around 3 small fires trying to generate enough warmth to sleep. The wind howled outside like a living thing and snow blew through the cracks in the ancient stones. I was on watch with another recruit named Titus. Young kid from Breville, couldn't have been more than 17. He'd lied about his age to enlist, something everyone knew but nobody mentioned because the Legion needed bodies more than it needed honesty. "You think we'll see combat?" he asked, his voice small in the darkness. I didn't know how to answer. I wanted to say something reassuring, something brave. But the cold had stripped away my capacity for comfortable lies. "Probably," I said. He was quiet for a long time, then, I've never killed anyone. Neither have I. Do you think it's different? Killing another man instead of bandits or monsters? I thought about that. Tried to imagine driving a sword into someone who spoke the same language I did, who prayed to the same gods, most of them anyway, who probably had family waiting for them somewhere, wondering if they'd come home. I don't know, I finally said. But I was lying. I knew. Even then, without experience, I knew it would be different. Worse, the kind of thing that would follow you into your dreams and change the shape of who you were. Titus died 2 weeks later during our first real engagement. Took a Stormcloak arrow through the throat during a skirmish near Riften. He drowned in his own blood while the rest of us held the line. And afterward, when the fighting was done, we burned his body with 7 others and continued marching. The Legion didn't stop. It never stopped. It just processed the loss, filed the appropriate reports, and requested replacements. The machine needed fuel. That was my first lesson in what service to the Empire actually meant. You weren't a person. You were a resource, valuable only insofar as you could fulfill your function. And when you couldn't, when an arrow found your throat or the cold claimed your fingers or your mind broke under the strain, the machine would discard you and move on without pause. But I kept marching. We all did. What else could we do? Fort Amol. We reached Fort Amol 18 days after leaving Cheydinhal, a weathered stone fortress on the banks of the White River flying the red diamond banner of the Empire home. Or what passed for home now. It looked like exactly what it was. A military installation built to project power and crush resistance. Gray stone walls, guard towers, barracks that smelled of sweat and weapon oil, a training yard where soldiers drilled in formation, their breath fogging in the cold air, a war room where officers planned operations, a medical tent where the wounded screamed. This was where they would transform us from recruits into soldiers. This was where we would learn to kill efficiently. This was where whatever remained of Marcus Valerius, merchant's son from Cheydinhal, would be burned away and replaced with something harder, something useful to the Empire. Training began the morning after we arrived. They woke us before dawn, though dawn came late in Skyrim, the sun reluctant to show itself in that frozen land. We assembled in the training yard wearing the same auxiliary leathers we'd marched in, breath steaming, bodies stiff from cold and exhaustion. 43 of us, minus the 8 who died on the march. Minus 2 more who deserted during the night, slipping away into the darkness rather than face what came next. 33 remained. Master-at-Arms Gallius Aventus stood before us, older Nord, surprisingly, one of the few who'd stayed loyal to the Empire despite the Talos ban. He'd fought in the Great War, survived the Battle of Red Ring, lost his left eye to a Dominion blade, and wore the scar like a badge of honor. "You are not soldiers," he said, his voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. "You are children playing dress-up in Legion colors. You are liabilities, you are resources I cannot afford to waste. My job is to transform you into something useful before you get yourselves and your brothers killed. My job is to make you worthy of Imperial steel." He paced before us, his single eye assessing each recruit with cold precision. "The Legion is not a mercenary company. We do not fight for gold. The Legion is not an adventure guild. We do not fight for glory. The Legion is an instrument of Imperial will. We fight because we are ordered to fight. We kill because we are ordered to kill. We die because the mission requires our death. Everything else, your comfort, your doubts, your feelings, is irrelevant. Do you understand?" We mumbled assent. "Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Sounded becoming the machine. They broke us down methodically, physically, mentally, emotionally. Every assumption we'd carried into the Legion was systematically dismantled and replaced with doctrine. Every weakness was identified and hammered out. Every moment of individuality was crushed beneath the weight of collective discipline. We drilled with practiced swords until our hands bled. Formation fighting. Shield walls, advance and retreat, flanking maneuvers hour after hour in the frozen training yard, muscles screaming, Gallius's voice cutting through our exhaustion like a whip. "Tighten that line! If you leave gaps, you die, your brothers die, again!" We ran miles every morning before dawn, full pack, through the snow and ice, building endurance, building the ability to march all day and still fight when you reached the battlefield. The Legion moved on foot. We would learn to love the march, or we would break beneath it. We studied tactics. Imperial doctrine passed down through generations, how to siege a city, how to break a shield wall, how to fight in urban environments, how to kill efficiently with sword, spear, bow, dagger, how to turn terrain to your advantage, how to recognize enemy formations and exploit their weaknesses. We learned the articles of war, the legal framework that governed Legion behavior, rules of engagement, treatment of prisoners, division of spoils, the bureaucratic machinery of military justice. Breaking the articles meant court-martial. Court-martial meant execution or the mines. The articles were sacred, inviolable, the spine that kept the Legion from becoming just another band of armed thugs. And we learned to kill. Not in theory, in practice. They gave us prisoners, bandits mostly, though there were a few Stormcloak captives mixed in. Condemned men who'd chosen execution by recruit, overhanging, or beheading. They bound them to posts in the training yard and handed us gladi. The neck, Gallius instructed, demonstrating with clinical precision on a straw dummy. Blade horizontal, thrust straight through the front, severs the spine, death is instant. This is the Legion method, clean, efficient, merciful in its way. Now you try. I remember my first, a bandit named Rolgar Nord, maybe 30 years old. Scarred face, dead eyes. He didn't beg, didn't plead, just stood there against the post waiting for me to do what I'd been trained to do. I hesitated, sword raised, blade touching his throat, but I couldn't push forward, couldn't cross that final threshold from person to killer. Complete the exercise, Recruit Valerius, Gallius said quietly. He's helpless, I said. Bound. This isn't combat, this is necessary. This is you learning that hesitation kills. This is you understanding that the Legion requires absolute commitment. Complete the exercise or join him against that post. It wasn't a bluff, I knew that. The Legion had no room for soldiers who couldn't follow orders. I pushed the blade forward, felt the resistance of flesh, the crunch of vertebrae. Warm blood coating my hands. Rolgar's eyes going distant, empty, nothing. A person transformed into meat in the space of a heartbeat. I vomited afterward. Several of us did. Gallius didn't comment, didn't judge, just moved on to the next exercise, the next recruit, the next condemned prisoner. The machine processing us, forging us, burning away our weakness. By the end of the first month, we were different, harder, colder, more efficient. We'd internalized the discipline, learned to suppress the part of ourselves that questioned orders. We moved in formation without thinking, responded to commands by reflex. We'd stopped being individuals and started becoming weapons. Earning the steel. They gave us our armor in a ceremony on the first of Evening Star. Proper Legion heavy armor. Iron cuirass bearing the red diamond, bracers, greaves, helmet, a gladius and scutum shield. The uniform of the Empire made manifest in steel. You are now soldiers of the Imperial Legion. General Cato addressed us in the fort's courtyard. You wear the armor of centuries. You carry the honor of all who served before you. You are the iron fist of the Empire, and you will bring order to this rebellious province for the Empire. For the Empire. We meant it. Gods help us, we meant it. They'd broken us down and rebuilt us as believers. We'd internalized the doctrine so completely that we'd forgotten it was doctrine at all. We thought we were choosing loyalty. We didn't realize we'd been manufactured into it. We were assigned to Legate Rika's command and deployed to active combat operations within the week. The reality of war. The war was brutal, dirty, nothing like the heroic battles from the histories, no grand formations clashing on open fields, no honorable duels between champions, just ambushes and raids. Burning villages, forced conscription, terrorizing civilians to deny the enemy support, fighting our fellow men in the mud and snow while the Empire and the Stormcloaks both claimed to be Skyrim's salvation. I killed my first Stormcloak soldier during a night raid on a supply depot near Windhelm Young Nord. Barely older than Titus had been, he came around a corner, saw me, started to raise his axe. I put my sword through his stomach before he could complete the motion, watched him fall, watched him die. stepped over his body and continued the mission because that's what soldiers do. The weeks blurred together. Patrol, skirmish, march, fight, sleep when you could, eat when supplies allowed, clean your weapons, repair your armor, write letters you knew might never be delivered. Try not to think about the faces of the men you'd killed. We lost soldiers. Not as dramatically as Titus. No arrows through the throat in my unit, but steadily. Attrition. A leg wound that turned septic. Frostbite severe enough to cripple. Mental breaks that left men staring at nothing, unable to function. The Empire processed these losses the same way it processed everything else, with forms, requisitions, replacement orders. I stopped counting my kills after 23. The number stopped mattering. Each death was the same. A person reduced to obstacle, obstacle eliminated, mission continued. The machine had taught me well. We tell ourselves stories to survive. We tell ourselves that the enemy is evil, that we're the righteous ones, that every person we kill deserved it, that the violence serves a purpose greater than itself. We tell ourselves these stories because the alternative, that we're just killers in uniform, that the causes we fight for are equally flawed, that we're destroying lives and communities for political abstractions, is too horrible to contemplate. I believed those stories most of the time. When doubt crept in, during the quiet hours of watch or after particularly brutal engagements, I pushed it down, reminded myself that I'd taken an oath, that the Legion was my family now, that the Empire represented order and civilization against chaos. The machine had done its work. I had become a proper component. Stamurtamans, the siege of Corvinjund. My first real test came 3 weeks after earning my armor, Corvinjund, an ancient Nord tomb in the hills north of Whiterun. The Stormcloaks had fortified it, using the ruins as a staging ground for raids on Imperial supply lines. Legate Ricca wanted it taken, not for strategic value. The tomb itself was worthless, but as a message to show the Stormcloaks that nowhere was safe, that the Empire would dig them out of whatever holes they hid in. We marched on Corvinjund with 2 full centuries, 200 soldiers, the largest operation I'd been part of. The kind of force that should have overwhelmed a rebel position easily. Should have. The Stormcloaks were waiting. They'd fortified the entrance, built barricades, positioned archers in the ruins above, and they had something we hadn't anticipated. A tongue. Not Ulfric himself, but one of his lieutenants who'd studied with the Greybeards before the war. A Nord who could shout, "The battle started at dawn." We formed up in the valley below the ruins, shields locked, advancing in textbook Legion formation. The plan was simple. Absorb their arrows with our shields, close the distance, overwhelm them with superior numbers and discipline. The first shout hit us when we were 50 yards from their barricade. "FUSRODAH!" The voice slammed into our front rank like a battering ram. Soldiers went flying, literally airborne, hurled backward by the force of sound-made weapon. Our formation shattered. Men scrambled to reform, but the Stormcloak archers were already loosing. Arrows fell like rain. I survived because I was in the 3rd rank, watched the soldier in front of me take an arrow through the eye, watched him fall, stepped over his body and closed the gap. Because that's what you're trained to do. The formation matters more than the individual. The line must hold. The second shout came as we reformed. This time we were ready. Those with shields raised them, braced for impact. It still hurt, still felt like being punched by a giant, but we held, kept advancing 1 step at a time, shields up, closing the distance. The fighting at the barricade was chaos, not the clean formations from training, just violence. Stabbing, hacking, shields bashing, men screaming. The metallic stink of blood and the sharper smell of fear sweat. I killed 3 Stormcloaks in that first push. Don't remember their faces, just the mechanical actions. Thrust, withdraw, advance, thrust, withdraw, advance. The Legion method. We took the outer defenses, pushed into the ruins. The fighting moved underground into the tomb itself. Narrow corridors, darkness. The kind of environment where numbers meant less and brutality meant everything. I remember a moment in those tunnels, standing over a dying Stormcloak, young Nord, maybe 20. He'd taken a gut wound, fatal but slow. He was crying, not from pain, from fear, knowing he was going to die alone in the dark, far from home. "Please," he said, "please, I don't want to die here." I should have ended it. Should have given him the mercy of a quick death, but I didn't. I just walked past. Left him to die slowly because the Legion trained me to complete the mission, not to show mercy to enemies. I think about him sometimes. Wonder if he had family, wonder if anyone came back for his body, wonder if he died quickly or if it took hours. Wonder what kind of person I'd become that I could leave a man to die like that and feel nothing. We cleared Corvinyon by midday, killed 47 Stormcloaks, captured 12, lost 33 of our own. The tongue escaped, shouted his way through our rear guard and fled into the wilderness. Rika was furious about that. The tomb itself was empty, just Draugr and old bones and Nordic grave goods that went into the Legion's coffers to fund the war effort. They called it a victory. Raised the red diamond banner over the ruins, added it to our campaign record, proof that the Empire was winning, that order was being restored. But standing in those ruins surrounded by our dead and theirs, I couldn't see the victory, just waste, just bodies. Just the machine grinding forward, processing casualties, preparing for the next engagement. Blamurus, the burning of Hjalmarch. The worst came in mid-sun's dusk, orders from General Tullius himself transmitted through Rika to the field commanders. The Stormcloaks were using villages in Hjalmarch as supply caches, storing weapons, food, recruiting volunteers. The villages weren't military targets, just farming communities caught between two armies. But they were supporting the rebellion, harboring Stormcloak soldiers that made them legitimate targets under the Articles of War. We were ordered to burn them, not to occupy, not to secure, to destroy. Completely leave nothing the Stormcloaks could use. Deny them resources, make supporting the rebellion more costly than supporting the Empire. It was called a pacification operation. Bureaucratic language for what was really happening. Terrorism, collective punishment. We were terrorizing civilians to break their will to resist. The first village was called Stonehills, small place, maybe 30 families, a mine, some farms, a tavern. We surrounded it at dawn, evacuated the civilians, gave them 1 hour to take what they could carry and leave. Then we burned everything, torched the houses, collapsed the mine, poisoned the well. Turned a functioning community into ash and rubble. The civilians watched from the road, silent, some crying, most just empty, watching everything they'd built consumed by soldiers following orders. One old woman spat at me as we marched past. I didn't react, didn't blame her. What could I say? That I was sorry? That I was just following orders? That the Empire needed this? We burned 4 villages in 3 days, destroyed the homes of maybe 200 people, made them refugees in their own land. The official reports called it successful denial of enemy resources. The soldiers called it something else. We didn't have words for what we were feeling, just did the job and tried not to think about it. One of the men in my unit, a veteran named Silvius, broke on the 3rd day. We'd just finished torching a farmhouse. Young family had lived there. You could see children's toys scattered in the yard. Silvius saw a doll, handmade, looked like someone's mother had sewn it. He picked it up, stood there holding it, started crying. "We're the villains," he said. "We're the fucking villains in this story." Sergeant Meridius heard him, walked over, looked at him with those iron eyes. "Put down the doll, soldier. We have 2 more villages to clear before nightfall." "I can't do this anymore," Silvius said. "This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't. You signed up to follow orders, now follow them, put down the doll, and get back in formation." He obeyed. What else could he do? The machine allowed no room for conscience, no space for moral hesitation. We were tools. Tools don't question their use. Silvius deserted 2 weeks later, just disappeared during a night march. The Legion sent hunters after him. Desertion during wartime means execution. I don't know if they found him. I hope they didn't. I hope he made it somewhere the Empire couldn't reach. Somewhere he could be human again instead of a component in the machine. But I didn't desert. Didn't break. Just kept following orders, kept telling myself the stories that made it bearable. That the Empire needed this. That we were preventing greater evils. That the Stormcloaks would have done worse. That order required sacrifice, that civilization had costs, all the comfortable lies that soldiers tell themselves when the alternative is confronting what they've become. The prisoner. Winter deepened. The war ground on. We fought. We marched. We survived. The cold became normal. The killing became routine. I stopped being Marcus Valerius from Cheydinhal and became Legionnaire Valerius, service number 4427C, assigned to 3rd Century 2nd Cohort Skyrim Auxiliary Forces. The person I'd been was buried under months of doctrine and discipline I thought in military time, spoke in military jargon, measured my life in patrol rotations and duty shifts. The machine had successfully converted me from raw material into finished product. Then they assigned me prisoner guard duty and something shifted. We'd captured a Stormcloak officer during a skirmish near Dawnstar. High-value prisoner. Rika wanted him interrogated, broken, made to reveal Ulfric's strategic plans. They kept him in the fort's dungeon, cold stone cell. No light, minimal food, standard treatment for enemy combatants who might have useful intelligence. My shift was midnight to dawn, 6 hours sitting outside his cell making sure he didn't escape or kill himself. Boring duty mostly. The prisoner rarely spoke, I rarely answered, just two men existing in silence, divided by iron bars and political allegiance. But on the 4th night, he started talking. "You're young," he said. His voice was rough from disuse, but educated. "How old?" 20? I didn't answer. Fraternizing with prisoners was against regulations. "I was 19 when I joined the Legion," he continued. "Year before the Great War. Thought I was going to save the Empire, bring glory to Skyrim, make my father proud." Despite myself, I was curious. "You were Legion?" 10 years. Fought at Red Ring. Survived the retreat from the Imperial city, got decorated for valor, I believed, son. Believed in the Empire more than I believed in the Divines. "Then why betray it?" He laughed, bitter sound. "Betray it?" I watched the Empire betray itself. Watched them sign the Concordat, watched them ban worship of Talos, the founder of the Empire, our god, made illegal by cowards who valued survival over honor. Watched them let Thalmor agents walk our streets, dragging worshippers from their homes. That's when I knew. The Empire I'd bled for was dead. Just a corpse being puppeteered by bureaucrats too afraid to admit it. "We survive," I said, repeating doctrine. "The Concordat was necessary. Without it, the Dominion would have destroyed us. So we destroyed ourselves instead?" Slower, but just as complete. "Tell me, Legionnaire, what are you fighting for? Really? Not the speeches they fed you in training. What do you actually believe you're preserving?" I didn't have a good answer, just abstractions, order, civilization, the Empire, words that meant everything and nothing. "I fight because I took an oath," I finally said. "Ah, the oath, the ultimate justification for every horror. I was following orders. I had sworn to serve. The oath bound me. You know what the oath really is, son? It's the chain they put on your conscience so you'll do things no free man would do. It's how they turn good people into instruments of evil without the guilt breaking them. We're not evil, we're soldiers. What's the difference? We burn villages, we kill our countrymen, we enforce laws we don't believe in and persecute people for worshiping their own gods. At what point does following orders stop being an excuse and start being a choice?" I wanted to argue, wanted to defend the Empire, the Legion, myself, but I couldn't find the words, because underneath the doctrine and the discipline and the comfortable lies, I knew he was right. We were choosing every day, every order we followed, every burning village, every dead Stormcloak who might have been us in different circumstances. We were choosing the machine over our humanity and calling it duty. "The Empire will execute you," I said, changing the subject. "You know that." "I know. At least I'll die for something I actually believe in. Can you say the same?" I didn't visit him again after that night, requested reassignment from guard duty, told myself it was because his words were enemy propaganda, psychological warfare, an attempt to undermine my loyalty. But really it was because he'd said things I'd been thinking and refusing to acknowledge. He'd voiced the doubts I'd buried under months of discipline, and I couldn't face that, couldn't question the machine while I was still part of it. They hanged him 3 days later. public execution in the fort's courtyard. Made us all watch. Deterrent effect, the officers called it. Show the soldiers what happens to traitors. Reinforce loyalty through fear. I watched him die. Watched him stand on that platform, noose around his neck, and refuse to beg, refuse to recant. He looked at us, 200 Legion soldiers assembled to witness his death, and his final words were, "The Empire is already dead. You're just too afraid to bury it." Then they dropped the platform and his neck snapped and he was gone. The officers dismissed us afterward, expected us to return to duties, process the lesson, continue serving. The machine rolling forward, having eliminated another component that didn't fit. But I couldn't shake his words, couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said in that cell. About choice, about the oath being a chain, about the difference between soldiers and murderers being thinner than we wanted to believe. I started noticing things I'd been trained not to see. The exhaustion in veterans' eyes, the way officers spoke about civilians as resources or liabilities, the casual cruelty of military justice, the bureaucratic language that turned atrocities into operations and killing into neutralizing targets. I started understanding that the Legion wasn't creating soldiers, it was creating something else, something efficient and obedient and utterly divorced from normal human morality. Something that could burn villages and hang prisoners and follow orders without the weight of conscience slowing it down. I'd become that thing we all had. The machine had worked perfectly on me, grinding away the parts that would question, that would resist, that would say, "No, this is wrong, I won't do this." That's how you know the machine has won. When you can't imagine existing outside it anymore. When your identity is so thoroughly merged with your function that questioning the machine feels like questioning your own existence. I was a perfect soldier, a perfect component, a perfect instrument of Imperial will. That's what made me valuable for the special operation. That's why they selected me when the summons came. The most loyal soldiers, the most psychologically resilient, the ones who would follow orders no matter how dark the path led. The ones who'd already proven they would sacrifice anything, even their own humanity in service to the Empire. The letter I never sent. I wrote a letter home once, never sent it, still carry it in my pack, folded and refolded so many times the creases have worn thin. It was after the burning of Hjalmarch, after watching those families walk away from their destroyed homes. I was on night watch, couldn't sleep, needed to put words to what I was feeling, needed to be human for just a moment instead of a component in the machine. Dear Mother, I'm writing to you from a place I can't name, doing things I can't describe. The Legion taught me that operational security matters more than honesty, so I'll tell you what I can, asterisk. I'm alive. I'm unhurt. I'm serving the Empire faithfully. These are the things you need to know. These are the comfortable truths that will let you sleep at night. But there are other truths. Truths I can't tell you because they would break something between us, because you raised me to be good and I've become something else entirely. Not evil, exactly, just efficient, obedient, willing to do what's necessary without the luxury of moral questioning. Do you remember when I was 10 and I cried for days when our dog died? You told me that my capacity for empathy was a gift. That feeling deeply was what made us human, not animals. I wonder what you'd think of me now. I watched a man die yesterday, enemy soldier, but still a man, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, nothing, just empty acknowledgement that he'd been an obstacle and was no longer one, asterisk. The Legion trains that out of you. The empathy, the hesitation, all the things that make you question whether what you're doing is right. They call it discipline. They call it strength. But I think they're just teaching us to shut down the parts of ourselves that would refuse, that would say, "No, this is wrong. I won't participate." I'm good at my job, Mother. Exemplary performance reviews, commendations for valor. My superiors call me reliable, trustworthy. the kind of soldier they can count on for difficult assignments. I think you'd be proud. I think you'd be horrified. I think both things can be true simultaneously. Asterisk. There's a word the Nords use, Draugr, the walking dead, bodies animated by ancient magic, carrying out purposes they don't remember or understand, just going through motions programmed into them centuries ago. I feel like that sometimes, like I'm still moving, still functioning, but something essential died somewhere along the way. The person who left Shadenhall isn't the person writing this letter. That boy is gone. Burned away by the cold and the killing and the constant necessity of being something other than human. Asterisk. I don't know if I can come home when my service ends, don't know if I'll fit there anymore. The Legion changes you in ways you can't undo. You learn to sleep through screaming. You learn to eat while surrounded by death. You learn to turn off every soft part of yourself until you're just edges and efficiency. Asterisk. Is that what you wanted for your third son? Is that what any of us want when we take the oath? We think we're joining something noble. We think we'll be heroes. We don't realize we're volunteering to be dismantled and rebuilt as tools, as weapons, as things that serve purposes we don't fully understand and wouldn't choose if we did. Asterisk. I should tell you I'm fine. I should tell you the Legion is honorable and our cause is just and your son is doing important work for the Empire. These are the lies that would comfort you. These are the stories that make military service palatable to families back home. Asterisk. But I can't lie to you. Not in this letter I'll never send. The truth is I'm not fine. The truth is I don't know if our cause is just or if we're just the winners writing the history. The truth is I'm terrified not of dying but of what I've become in order to survive. The truth is I miss the boy who cried over a dead dog. I miss feeling things. I miss being certain about right and wrong. I miss believing the Empire deserved my service instead of just demanding it. Asterisk. I don't know how to end this letter. Don't know what wisdom to offer or what reassurance to give. Just know that somewhere in Skyrim your son is still alive, still fighting, still trying to hold on to some fragment of the person you raised, even as the machine grinds that person into dust. With love and regret, Marcus. I folded the letter and never opened it again. What would be the point? She couldn't read it, couldn't help, couldn't change anything. The machine had already processed me. All that remained was to fulfill my function until the machine decided I was no longer useful. 2 weeks after writing that letter, we received orders for a special operation. The summons. The summons came on a frozen morning in Sun's Dawn. 3 months since I'd earned my armor, I'd survived 4 major engagements, countless skirmishes, and the brutal Skyrim winter. I was a soldier. This was my function. Legate Rika called me to the war room along with 9 other veterans from various units. We assembled before her, standing at attention, wondering what mission required such specific selection. At ease, she said, studying us with those sharp Nordic eyes. You're probably wondering why you're here. The 10 of you represent the most capable soldiers under my command. Strong combat records, unquestioning loyalty, psychological resilience. You're about to learn why those qualities matter. She unfurled a map of Skyrim, marking a location in the Velothi Mountains between Eastmarch and the Rift Remote, far from any settlement. A blank space on most maps. There's a facility here, she said. Very old. Predates the Empire, predates the Nords actually. It was built by the Dwemer. Though what they used it for we don't fully know. What we do know is that it serves a vital function in maintaining Imperial control over Skyrim. A function that requires regular maintenance. She paused, choosing her words carefully. This is classified at the highest level. What I'm about to tell you falls under the doctrine of necessary secrets. You will speak of this to no one, ever. Violation means immediate execution, do you understand? Yes, Legate. The Empire survives because of systems, logistics, supply chains, communication networks, and other things, stranger things. The kind of infrastructure that doesn't appear in official documents but makes everything else possible. The facility you're being assigned to is one of those things. It requires 10 soldiers every 4 months. You're the next rotation. My stomach tightened. Something about the way she said requires. What kind of maintenance, Legate? I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. The kind that soldiers don't ask questions about, Valerius. The kind that you do because the Empire needs it done and you've sworn an oath. You'll understand when you get there, or you won't, and it won't matter either way. You'll fulfill your duty. The march into darkness. We left Fort Amol 2 days later, 10 soldiers in full armor, led by a battle mage named Claudia Severus, older woman, Imperial. She'd served for 40 years, seen things that put shadows in her eyes. She didn't talk much during the 5-day march into the mountains. None of us did. We all felt it. The sense that we were walking towards something that would change us fundamentally. The landscape grew harsher as we climbed. The Velothi Mountains were ancient, primal. The kind of terrain that made you feel insignificant. Snow and ice and exposed rock. Wind that cut through armor like it wasn't there. We marched in silence, each of us alone with our thoughts, wondering what waited at the end of this journey. The facility was built into the mountain itself. A massive stone door bearing Dwemer geometric patterns hidden behind a waterfall in a narrow valley. No markers, no guards. Nothing to indicate its significance, but the door was maintained. Recently oiled, clearly in regular use, Claudia produced a strange key, not metal, but crystallized magicka. Glowing with faint blue light, she inserted it into the central mechanism. The door opened silently, revealing darkness beyond. "Stay close," she said. "Watch your footing. Don't touch anything unless I tell you to." We descended. The architecture was Dwemer, but wrong somehow. The geometric precision twisted in ways that hurt to look at. The bronze construction that should have tarnished millennia ago still gleamed as if freshly cast. And the sound, a constant low hum that you felt more than heard, vibrating in your chest, in your bones, in your teeth. We walked for an hour, down, always down, passing through vast chambers filled with machinery that still functioned, though no one understood its purpose, past reservoirs of strange liquid that glowed with internal light, through corridors lined with pipes carrying something. Energy? Magicka? Something else? The temperature changed as we descended, not colder, warmer, oppressively warm. We removed our helmets, then our cuirasses, carrying them as we walked. The air grew thick, hard to breathe, that hum intensifying until it was all I could hear. I noticed details as we walked, scratches on the walls, old bloodstains, scrubbed but not entirely removed. The smell of something burnt, the sense that many people had walked this path before us and none had walked back out. One of the other soldiers, a Nord named Tertius, spoke quietly. "This feels wrong." "Keep moving," Claudia said, not unkindly, just resigned. We kept moving. What else could we do? We were soldiers, we'd been given orders. The machine had trained us too well to refuse now, even when every instinct screamed that we should run. Finally, we reached the bottom. Tirada's 45 to 55 climax, 1,457 out of 1,500 words. The Chamber of Souls. The chamber was enormous, spherical. The walls were covered in Dwemer inscriptions that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. At the center, suspended by some invisible force, hung a massive construct of bronze and crystal. Beautiful in its terrible geometry, radiating power that made my skin prickle. And beneath it, arranged in a circle, were 9 stone platforms, each one occupied by a skeleton in Legion armor, the remains of the previous rotation. "This is a soul engine," Claudia said quietly. "One of 7 that maintain the Empire's protective wards across Tamriel. The Dwemer built them for purposes we don't fully understand, but we've learned to utilize them. They require sacrifice. 10 souls every 4 months freely given to sustain the ward network that protects our cities from Daedric incursion, that strengthens our mages, that makes Imperial magic superior to our enemies. Without these engines, the Empire would have fallen during the Oblivion crisis, would have fallen to the Aldmeri Dominion during the Great War, would fall to the Stormcloaks now. No, 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 you're going to kill us. said Tertius. His voice was steady, too steady. Shock makes you calm sometimes. No, Claudia said. You're going to give yourselves willingly because you understand that the Empire requires this sacrifice, because you are soldiers and soldiers do what duty demands. This is insane, I heard myself say. This is murder. This is necessary. Her voice was hard, final. Do you think I wanted to learn this truth? I was 23 when they brought me here for my first rotation as a battle mage escort. I watched 10 soldiers climb onto those platforms, watched the engine consume them, watched their souls burn away to power a machine that keeps the Empire functioning. I vomited for 3 days afterward, couldn't sleep for months, but I kept serving because someone has to. Because if we don't make these sacrifices, everything falls apart. The Empire dies, the provinces descend into chaos, the Dominion wins, the Daedra return. This is the price of civilization, soldier. This is what's required. She began the ritual preparations, drew binding circles in phosphorescent chalk, lit candles that burned with blue flame, their light casting twisted shadows across the chamber walls, chanted in languages I didn't recognize. Old tongues, perhaps Dwemer, perhaps something older. The engine responded, its hum deepening, becoming almost a voice. We could have fought, should have fought. 10 armed soldiers against 1 battle mage. We might have won, might have killed her, escaped back up through the facility and into the mountains, run, deserted, saved ourselves, but we didn't. Because we were soldiers, because the machine had worked, because they'd trained us to follow orders even when those orders meant our deaths. Because some part of us, gods forgive us, believed her. Believed that this sacrifice mattered, that the Empire needed this, that our deaths would serve the greater good. We tell ourselves stories to survive. We tell ourselves that our suffering has meaning, that our sacrifice serves something worthy, that the institutions we've given ourselves to deserve our loyalty. We tell ourselves these things because the alternative, that we're just fuel for a machine that devours its own children, that we've been manipulated into embracing our own destruction, that the Empire we love is built on horrors hidden in darkness, is too terrible to contemplate. The sacrifice. I climbed onto my platform. The stone was warm beneath my feet, smooth, worn by countless others who'd stood here before me. The 9 others took their positions around the circle. I could see their faces, fear, resignation, that terrible soldier's discipline that kept us standing when we should have been running. Claudia moved between us, binding each soldier with chains of solidified magicka. They wrapped around our wrists, our ankles, our throats, not tight enough to strangle, but impossible to break. We were locked in place, committed. It doesn't hurt, she said, and I could hear the lie in her voice. You'll feel a pulling sensation, then peace. Your sacrifice will be honored. Your names recorded in the hidden histories. The Empire will continue because of what you give today. She completed the circle, stood at its center, raised her hands and spoke words that made reality shiver. The engine activated, pain, unimaginable pain. Like every cell in my body was being torn apart and reconstituted, like my soul was being pulled out through my skin, like everything I was, every memory, every hope, every moment of my 19 years was being unraveled and fed into that hungry machine, and I screamed. We all screamed. The sound lost in the engine's roar, in the terrible harmonics of Dwemer machinery consuming human souls. But even as I was being destroyed, even as I felt myself dissolving, something else happened. Something Claudia probably hadn't known about or hadn't bothered to mention. The engine didn't just consume us, it connected us, our souls being drawn into its mechanisms, touched, merged. For one eternal moment, I was not just Marcus Valerius, I was all 10 of us. I experienced their lives, their memories, their fears and hopes and final thoughts. Tertius, the Nord, who'd joined the Legion to escape his father's abuse, who'd found family in his unit, who died thinking of his brothers in arms. Sula, the Dunmer woman, who'd served for 15 years, who'd survived the eruption of Red Mountain as a child, who'd seen too much death and welcomed this end. Marcus Decimus, who shared my first name, young Breton from High Rock, who joined because his sweetheart was pregnant and he needed the signing bonus, who died wondering if he'd ever meet his child. 7 others, each with full lives, complete histories, loves and losses and dreams. All of it flowing through me, through us, as the engine pulled us together into something larger. We became one consciousness, spread across multiple dying bodies, understanding in that moment what the Dwemer had truly built. Not a weapon, not exactly a transformer. Something that took individual consciousness and merged it into collective purpose. Something that had once powered an entire civilization by unifying the Dwemer into a single transcendent will. The Empire had found it, had learned to feed its souls, had perverted its purpose into a tool of political power, and it worked. Gods help us, it worked. I could feel the wards spreading across Tamriel, could sense the protective magics wrapping around Imperial installations, could perceive the network of soul engines, 7 of them, yes, spread across the continent, all-consuming soldiers, all maintaining the hidden infrastructure that made Imperial power possible. And in that moment of unwilling transcendence, I understood the truth. The Empire did need this. The wards were real, the protection genuine. Without the engines, the Dominion would crush us, the Daedra would run rampant, civilization would collapse into warlord territories and endless violence. But that necessity didn't make it right, didn't make it just, didn't redeem the horror of what was being done to us. The Empire survived by devouring its most loyal children, by hiding that consumption behind bureaucracy and military necessity, by ensuring that only the most dedicated soldiers ever learned the truth, and only when it was too late to refuse. And we were not heroes, we were fuel, and the machine would continue long after we were gone, processing new soldiers, maintaining the fiction of noble service while hiding the reality of sacrifice. The impossible survival. But something went wrong, or maybe right, depending on how you look at it. The engine had been damaged somehow, centuries of use without proper Dwemer maintenance, a crack in the mechanism, a flaw in the crystalline matrix. When it pulled our souls, mine didn't fully transfer, part of me remained, anchored to my body through sheer stubborn refusal to let go. Through some quirk of fate or magic or desperate will, the others dissolved completely, their consciousness absorbed into the engine, their bodies left as empty shells. But I hung there, suspended between existence and oblivion, part of me being consumed, part of me holding on, feeling the 9 others dying, their final thoughts echoing through our shared consciousness before they winked out one by one, and then silence, terrible silence. The engine's hum dropping to its normal frequency, Claudia's chanting stopping, the ritual complete except for one stubborn soldier who refused to die properly. I don't remember the transition. One moment I was experiencing cosmic horror. The next, I was waking up in the medical tent at Fort Amal. Claudia standing over me with an expression I couldn't read. "You survived," she said. "Shouldn't have been possible, the others didn't. But you're here. Changed, probably. The engine leaves marks on those it touches, but alive." 55 to 60 minutes, resolution 727 out of 750 words. What remains? They discharged me 3 days later, medical retirement. They gave me the pension they'd promised, 63 septims a month, blood money, payment for services rendered. They made me sign documents, more bureaucracy, more legal protection for institutional horrors, swearing me to secrecy about everything I'd seen. I signed. What else could I do? That was 2 years ago. I've been wandering Tamriel since, trying to make sense of what happened. Trying to understand what I am now, still mostly human but touched by that engine. Carrying fragments of 9 other souls inside me, I hear their voices sometimes, feel their memories. We're not quite separate anymore, not quite one. The Empire continues, the Legion still recruits, still promises purpose and belonging, still transforming young men and women into soldiers. And somewhere in the mountains, the soul engines are still humming, still hungry, still requiring their regular maintenance. Every 4 months, 10 soldiers, 7 engines, 210 Imperial citizens per year, fed into the machine that keeps the lights on. Does that sacrifice serve a purpose? Yes, is it necessary? Probably. The wards are real, the protection genuine. Without the engines, the Empire might truly fall, but necessity isn't the same as righteousness. And service isn't the same as willing sacrifice when the truth is hidden. until you're chained to a platform with nowhere to run. I still taste copper sometimes. That coin from the recruitment office, the blood on my sword, the metallic tang of magicka from the engine. It all blends together in my mouth, the taste of empire, of sacrifice, of truth learned too late. My name is Marcus Valerius, third son of a failed merchant, former soldier of the Imperial Legion. Survivor of something I probably shouldn't have survived. Ghost carrying the memories of 9 others who gave everything because they were told it mattered. This is my testimony, my confession, my warning. The Legion is still recruiting. The engines are still hungry. The Empire still needs soldiers willing to march into darkness. Maybe you'll be one of them. Maybe you'll believe the promises they make. Maybe you'll serve your 5 years, earn your pension, and return home to tell proud stories about your time in the Legion. Or maybe you'll learn what I learned. Maybe you'll discover that the Empire's foundations are built on secrets and sacrifice. Maybe you'll find yourself standing in a chamber deep beneath the earth, understanding too late that loyalty can be weaponized, that institutions exploit the very dedication they cultivate. What are you willing to become in service to something that might not deserve your devotion? I became a ghost, a fractured consciousness, a warning written in flesh and memory that the Empire endures. It always endures because it's very good at finding young people willing to give everything for something larger than themselves. Very good at transforming that idealism into fuel. I'm in Skyrim still, can't seem to leave. Maybe because part of me died here, maybe because the engine's touch binds me to this place. I wander between cities, taking odd jobs, trying to exist in this half-life. Sometimes I see Legion recruiters in the taverns, young men and women listening to promises of purpose and belonging. The same promises I heard in that Cheydinhall office. The same copper coin changing hands, and I don't intervene, don't warn them. What would I say? That their idealism will be exploited? That service demands more than they can imagine? They wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed me. You can't explain this kind of truth. You can only live it, survive it, carry it. The cold finds everyone eventually in Skyrim, that hungry cold that seeps into bones and never quite leaves. I feel it now, standing outside another tavern in another anonymous town, watching another Legion recruiter talk to another group of young people hungry for purpose. The copper taste is back, always comes back. Reminder and warning and simple fact of existence. This is what it's like to serve the Empire. This is what they take from you. This is the price they never mention until you've already agreed to pay it. May you find the choice I couldn't make. May you walk away while walking away is still possible. May you never taste copper the way I do. The Legion is recruiting, and now the choice is yours. Thank you for choosing to hear my life story. Subscribe to Sleep in Elder Scrolls again.